Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
And I'm Joshua.
Josh and I are going to discuss Wonder Woman 84, the sequel to 2017's Wonder Woman, written and directed by Patty Jenkins.
Yes.
It stars Gal Gadot, Pedro Pascal, Kristen Wiig and Chris Pine. It's the 1980s and Diana is working as an anthropologist at the Smithsonian in DC while doing Wonder Woman heroics on the side. One day, a work colleague of hers, Barbara, played by Wiig, is given a strange crystal to study which ends up being a relic of the gods that grants wishes, but with a twist. Steve Trevor, played by Pine, the World War I pilot who sacrificed himself at the end of the first film, is back, although not entirely. Failing oil tycoon MacLeod, played by the Mandalorian's Pedro Pascal, has long coveted the crystal with the intention of using it to shape the world to his desires. Meanwhile, Barbara, lacking in self-confidence but with a warm and friendly personality, wishes to be just like the radiant Diana, whom she both idolises and envies, only to get more than she bargained for. The film is currently playing in cinemas and has been out for a few weeks now. We'll discuss the film as a whole and try not to go too heavy on the spoilers.
Yeah.
First up, this is a very long movie.
It is.
2.5 hours.
Oh boy.
Sore bums galore.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the original Wonder Woman before we get started?
I really enjoyed the original Wonder Woman. I thought it was a nice setting, you know. What better than the Great War to show how terrible man has become and evolved in our methods of being able to kill each other. Granted, the end boss fight with Ares was just dreadful, but it made up for it with the rest prior.
Yeah, I really liked that film, and the ending was really much an on-trend decision at the time. You know, lots of big grey boss battles at the end, like you said. You know, Steppenwolf, Doomsday, Zod.
Yeah.
But this one is light, it's bright, it's colourful, it's the 1980s.
Yes, it is.
So much colour.
So much colour. and some 80s humour.
Just something I very quickly want to say. A lot of people have said, why is this set in the 1980s if you're not going to play any 80s music, if you're not going to have anything overtly 1980s? The 80s portion of this film is the way it's written and the way it's made.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of films that came out in the 80s that had some very suspect things in them. You think about the Tom Hanks movie Big.
Yeah.
He's a 13-year-old boy or something. He becomes like a man, Tom Hanks. And he
wishes to be big.
He has sex, basically.
Yep.
And at the end you realise, and the lady realises, he's a child in Tom Hanks's body. So many other weird things happen in those films.
Oh, the 80s is just crazy, man.
Oh, I mean, a ghost getting into bed with Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters. That's a real, like, what the hell were they thinking moment. And there's a few of those moments in this film, which is why I say this is an authentic 80s movie.
I went in with... I set the bar low, and I'm glad it knocked it, and then replaced it and put it back up.
Right.
It was definitely a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I was a little concerned with Dr. Minerva coming in as with Kristen Wiig playing the cheetah and seeing how they were going to do that. And I really enjoyed everyone's performances in this, and I do love the whole monkey's paw deal that they're having to deal with throughout the entire film. What do you value most, but what are you willing to give for it? I love stuff that deals with the monkey's paw.
It was a really interesting dynamic, that, because Barbara, she takes on all these abilities and powers very similar to Wonder Woman. I thought she was draining them from Wonder Woman, but no, definitely, it was trading off her kindness.
Her humanity.
Yeah, to give her this this feline edge. It was interesting to see, and she didn't become the CGI cheetah, the actual furry lady from the comics that she's known to be
until towards the very end,
and only for like a minute or two.
Yeah, enough to get a interesting fight scene in.
Did you get any sort of Uncanny Valley, like Cats, the musical sort of things from it?
No.
Yeah, I didn't as well. I thought she looked fine, which was,
I mean,
good.
It was probably more on par with the Disney de-aging.
Yeah, it wasn't entirely, because I mean, she's not like become a cat.
No.
And she's still got the human face, but it's not like done as horrifically as the movie Cats.
No. And if you look at the comic version of Cheetah, it always varies, where she's more human-like with just some animal-like characteristics, or she's full-on Cheetah Woman.
Yeah. So, that was good. Maxwell Lord.
MacLeod, Dr. Destiny.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. He is.
Very interesting and a little bit... He's good.
Yes.
But he could be better.
Quote the man himself there, yes. Yeah, he is. He's very different. I mean, we were talking about him last week on the show as the Mandalorian.
Yes.
You would not believe this is the same guy.
No.
Looks different, sounds different,
Acts
different.
a hell of a lot more different.
Yeah, I really liked him. He's sort of... I was always grinning when he was on screen.
Oh, he's got that energy where you feel like he's screwing you, but you can't help but love him.
Yeah. I like the scene where he tricks Barbara, he gets into her office to steal the crystal, and he kisses her, and he's like, "Oh, I love all this stuff." And it's a tiny little thing, but I really liked his character. And a lot of people are here, but I liked him. Yeah. He's over the top and gratuitous.
It's very 80s. Yeah. Very 80s. You know, the guy that's going to be running a seminar to sell you a condo or a timeshare somewhere.
He is very much, yes. But yeah, he like I said, he covets the crystal and he embodies
the crystal.
Yeah, the crystal becomes him, so he can now grant wishes and then get something from them.
Slowly kills him.
Yeah, until he sort of uses it to heal himself. And there's that montage where he's just granting people wishes and he's getting sicker and sicker and sort of more crazy and hellbent, and you see how these wishes sort of play out. Again, very sort of 80s movie logic there.
Yes, the monkey's paw, classic thing.
The return of Steve Trevor.
Yes.
Is an interesting one. Because his soul returns, his consciousness, but it goes into the body of another man. And you see this other man at first until, you do this nice little, spin around them, and it's Chris Pine when they get back around. So this is Steve Trevor in the body of another man, and a lot of people have said some things like, Diana sort of takes advantage and uses this man against his will.
Yeah, but at the same time...
80s movie.
But this is also one of the few things that I actually found quite... Well, I was told about this, and the way it was explained to me was very poorly.
Yes.
But I look at it now, and I realize, no, this is actually this is Diana evolving, because she's been hung up on Steve since the end of the Great War.
Yeah. A lot of people have said it's been 60 years, move on.
Yeah.
She's an immortal. She lives at a different rate to us.
Pretty much.
And I mean, sure, by that logic, the 2 weeks she spent with him was like a day, probably, in our regards. But also back then, you had people who would go off to war and their partners would still be mourning them decades after the fact, after they were killed.
Yeah.
And that's very on brand, I feel.
It's very on brand, but it begins the evolution of she realizes strength comes from within. It's not that you're given. It's like how the challenge in the early part of the movie where as a kid she's doing the Golden Warrior challenge. And she takes the quick and easy path.
Yes.
She realizes if she truly wants to see Steve again, she can't take the quick and easy path.
Yes.
It's slowly sapping her of her powers and her immortality.
It doesn't go all the way, thankfully.
No.
I mean, she still has her powers. She's just, she's weakened and she's realizing this, and Steve sort of has to talk some sense into her. And a lot of people then criticize it, saying it is, it's either sexist or it's, done a disservice to her character. But she's not flawless. I mean, she's a great person. She's a great character.
She's been a feminist icon for decades, and you have a moment where she can genuinely evolve as a character within this continuity. Fucking go for it.
Yeah.
No character is perfect, particularly Diana Prince.
Yeah, I think it gives the humanity that I like, and for her to sort of rise above it and then go, okay, sure, I've been a bit of a mopey teenager over this thing, but no, I need to realise I've got responsibilities. I'm going to rise above this.
And she does begrudgingly renounce her wish.
And gets a new power off it, which is cool.
Yes.
A few unexplained things, like she does know magic, it seems. You do get a a homage to the Invisible Jet, which is
Yeah, it was great. I loved that moment.
a classic Wonder Woman staple.
The movie's fun in itself. It's got its moments where it could be a hell of a lot better, but it's still good.
I do think the first bit, which I've heard like differing opinions, like saying the first bit's really good. I don't like the finale.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed the finale a little bit. Granted, it felt a little too hokey, but I did enjoy it because there's only one way to really beat a guy who can grant wishes without, killing him. Because you got to get close to be able to kill him.
Which is what I'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But I think the first half of this film, she's only in the Wonder Woman costume once in that entire first hour of the film. It's not until about 40 minutes in that you actually are introduced to Alistair, which is MacLeod's son.
Yes.
Which is sort of the defining character moment for him. That's 40 minutes in.
Yeah.
It's very long, and while these movies have like a large general audience, you are going to have kids watching this film.
Yes.
And I feel some might be really bored by their first hour, unless they're really invested in, oil deals and stuff, and the monkey's paw stuff.
Yeah. Granted, it does kind of bring one character into the silver screen from the DC canon, Simon Stagg.
Yeah, who's he?
He was the business partner who sort of pulled out.
Right, yes. Yeah, that was fun when you sort of realise like how the wishes work and how
people
Max,
get in their comeuppance.
Yeah, Max wishes that he would, be done away with, and then he was the IRS or the tax office.
The taxation office, yeah.
shows up to take him away, just very conveniently. That's sort of the funny realisation.
He more stated that it was going to happen.
Yes.
Because he was taking all his shares and all that.
I was going to say, I really liked that when it came to the big villain fights, she didn't just set out to kill the villains.
No.
She did try to reason with them and have compassion. And even as this cheetah woman is trying to kill her, she's still like, I'm trying to stop you from harming me, but also stop you from hurting yourself.
Renounce your wish. This is the only way it's really going to save you.
Yeah, which I really like.
Granted, it does leave us with an ambiguity of what's going to happen to Dr. Minerva at the end.
Yeah, well, it's a trend in these films where you have the villain, going back even to Tim Burton's Batman, where the villain is there just for one film and they get bonked off.
Well, she's not bonked off, that's the thing, though.
But that's the good thing.
Yeah.
I like that, but she's not going to be the cheater anymore. MacLeod isn't going to be
Dr. Destiny.
But I think I prefer this to, say, the Birds of Prey approach where they blow up Black Mask.
That's true.
Where he's not going to be there anymore. Or snap Zod's neck, Prevent them from ever coming back. I don't think they will, though, because, these movies, they take years to make and they're not so episodic.
No.
You can't just have characters come back willy-nilly.
Although you can when it comes to post-credit moments.
True that. Yes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that mid-credit scene? So you're introduced to the concept of Asteria. She was a Amazonian warrior.
She was the Golden Warrior mentioned in the beginning of the film, the Amazonian who stood behind to repel man while the Amazons fled to Themyscira.
Yes. And we meet her, living in the world, played by Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman. That was just nice, that one.
It was. It wasn't like something overt as like, say, having Ben Affleck or, Michael Keaton meet up.
Yes. Yeah, do you think she'll come back?
Maybe, we'll see,
Yeah, I think it'd work.
DC's always had an interesting thing, even Marvel as well, where they've had previous actors who have played these characters sort of pop back and sort of interact with the main character.
Well, yeah, I mean, we might be seeing that with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man coming up with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire back. And that's a whole other topic.
That's a whole other series.
I did like this film, not as much as the first one.
No.
But I think I'd pop it in before the first one because I just do prefer the fact that she's already established.
Yes.
And Pedro Pascal is great. He's just got this manic energy about him, and Always playing dads.
Yeah. Single dads for some reason. Or
Yes.
divorced dads.
Yeah. A few criticisms I've heard as well. Do you think it was overtly Trump, his character, or some of the themes? Because a lot of people just sort of looked at this wall that gets made, it gets wished into existence and go, Trump reference. When I'm like, okay,
not.
Hadrian never did anything of Chinese with their wall.
It's part of the wish that he has the oil baron grant, because he thinks he's getting all his things. And the oil baron wants his family's recognition of rulership over the land returned. And he says, no one is allowed to enter or leave. Giant stone wall.
Yeah.
I don't think Pascal's character is very Trump-like. I think the president is a bit more.
Interesting, actually, that president. Some might know the actor Stuart Mulliganis. I think his name. He played the magician Klaus in the series Jonathan Creek. He also played Richard Nixon in Doctor Who 9 years ago, which was funny to see. Although he's not Reagan in this. He's not Nixon. He's just a generic.
Yeah, he's just an in-between president that really can be written off.
Yes.
He's a Cold War era president. And I think that was a bit more Trump-esque with, he's willing to let some random into the White House. Granted, it's all done via wish, but he's so willing to be able to say, yeah, I want to be able to push the button and not care for the consequences.
Oh, yeah. And on the final thing about Kristen Wiig as well, they really sold the transformation. Again, that was a very 80s thing where more than conventionally attractive person playing a less than Hollywood ugly. Yeah. And then they take off their glasses and they're stunning.
Yeah.
Literally has her pulling off the glasses saying, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah, well, the reading, it's cured my eyesight.
The transformation was really good, though. Like,
yes.
How they dressed her down at first, and then it's like, wow, she steals the show.
She evolves into this apex.
Final thoughts?
Requote Max Lord again. It's good, but it could have been better.
Yes.
But I'm happy with good at this point, and I wouldn't be using a wish to make it better.
We're now joined in the studio by two new members. Welcome, Matt, and welcome, Holly.
Hi.
Hello.
What are your thoughts on Wonder Woman 84?
Where do we start? I loved it. First of all, just a banner. I thought it was really, really strong. It wasn't as strong as the first one in some ways, i.e. plot, but it was really, really strong in visuals, in ideas, in conveying those ideas, and all of the elements came together really nicely. I just had a few issues with the way that they did the plot and how rushed it seemed.
What do you mean?
Well, because if I remember correct, I haven't rewatched it since we saw it a couple of weeks ago in cinemas, because we saw it when it came out on the day that it came out. And I personally felt that the characterization was really strong. The emotional beats were really, really strong. And I think that's what this film needed, was really strong emotional beats. But the way that things were resolved felt too quick and nice for me. I think there should have been more push and there should have been more pull.
There was a lot of it's magic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like obviously the whole point of having magic in a story is that it can do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. But the catch with that is you have to establish the way that the magic works before it does the thing. Like everyone knows Wonder Woman's invisible jet. Like it's an iconic part of the comics and the Linda Carter TV show. And so for us as fans, the scene where Steve and Diana are in the jet and she makes it invisible is like, whoa, just like what I've already seen.
And then it's never spoken of again.
Pretty much.
It was never spoken of previously, is also what I'm getting at.
And her learning to fly, yeah, it was a good emotional beat, but it was kind of just, this happened, here you go, have fun. And she didn't have to, when, spoiler alert, which I'm assuming doesn't really matter about spoilers because that's kind of what the point of this show is, when she gives up Chris Pine's character, when she gives up Steve, she just immediately gets her powers back. Like there's no her getting them back slowly and progressively, like how she lost them. It's just like she goes, bye, dude, and then she's back to normal.
I don't have an issue with that because the whole point was you renounce your wish and you get back the thing that was most dear to you. So that's actually like what I was saying, like the magic has to be established for it to work. That's how we knew it would happen. But then what you mentioned about her learning to fly, she just immediately learned to fly after she got her powers back. And it was, as you said, it was a good emotional beat because previously, Steve, who's a pilot, was like, oh, it's just feeling the air and touching the wind or whatever he said. And so she just like jumps into the sky and she remembers him saying that and now she can fly. But then also she needs to lasso the lightning, which is such a good visual. It looked so cool when she was swinging from lightning bolts.
Visually, very pleasing film, this one, which
Oh
I
my
don't think you
God,
mentioned.
yes.
Which was helped by the fact that it was set in the 80s.
Yes.
Obviously.
I really like that there were actual, like, stakes. It wasn't just, you know, like the last film, it had stakes. And the god of war, Ares, was a big villain. But he wasn't to the point of Pedro Pascal's villain, Maxwell Lord, who was more than willing to let the whole world collapse around him so that he could have his wish and so that he could sustain himself and be the most powerful thing. And it got to the point where, which is what part of the whole deal was, like, yeah, it took his life force, but it also kind of took his sanity because he went beyond what the point of what he was trying to do was. He started out with the wishing stone to get rich and to be successful. And by the end of it, you can see that that power and his ability has completely consumed him. So in my kind of way of looking at it, the trick that the idol played on him was not just that it was stealing his life, it was also just consuming him. Rather than just stealing his life force, it actually consumed him in all ways. And it was only until, which I know you didn't particularly like that it was like a MacGuffin thing with the lasso of truth, but also that's a massive part of Wonder Woman's character. And the truth comes from, like she says in the film, like the power of the lasso isn't from her, it's from the truth that is around her and that she provides.
One thing I mentioned in the first part of this episode with Josh was that it's very good to see that she has compassion for the villains. She doesn't outright try to kill them. She tries to reason with them, tries to save them from themselves, and succeeds. And I mean, the thing with these films is you don't usually see villains return. You know, they're always killing them off left and right, like with, you know, Black Mask and Birds of Prey. They just blow them up.
Which, to be fair, very fun.
But with this, you know, they keep them around if they want to do more with them.
Except,
who knows if they will.
I really am interested to see where Cheetah goes. Because Cheetah never renounced her wish.
Yeah, what did you think about her and the whole effects with her?
I loved it. I was sitting there going, oh God, she's about to come out and she's going to look shit and it's going to be bad and oh my God. And then she came out and I was like, they did it right?
Yeah.
She looked amazing and the way that she got there was great. And just I love Kristen Wiig. She is amazing. And as a villain, most people think of her as just, you know, comedy and just straight comedy. But as a villain, she's always perfect. And playing the character she played, you can see her develop and you can see how much of a strong actress she is.
To be fair, she was also very funny in the film.
Oh, she was hysterical. But the bits where she slowly started to lose her humanity, the acting was incredible and she was the perfect choice for the character. I'm just very interested to see where they go because they made a point to not show her saying, I renounce my wish.
That's true, yeah.
They made a point of it. They just made her, she didn't have her whole cheetah vibe anymore because that was Maxwell Lord's wish. He got that from trading with other people with their wish.
Yes.
It was like, you wish this, so I give her your prowess or I give her your thing, and that's what turned her into Cheetah. But the humanity side of it, that was her wish, and she never renounced that. She actually did that wish before Pedro Pascal's character even wished on the wishing stone.
And Cheetah is an iconic Wonder Woman villain, like possibly the most iconic one. So
I don't doubt she's going to be back.
They wouldn't waste her like that.
I mean, they're probably going to go for the original kind of... Well, there's so many ways that Cheetah gets her powers in the original comics and in all of the TV shows and everything. And, you know, even harkening back to just her being a woman in a cheetah onesie.
Yes.
Like, there are so many different ways that she gets those powers, but at the crux of it, she has still got Diana's powers. And she still does not have humanity left.
It's an interesting thing which I completely missed, and that's opened up a lot more doors for the future. I got a final thought for you before we wrap up the episode. One thing I noted to Josh was that a lot of people said this doesn't really feel like it really embraced the whole 80s aesthetic. You know, there's not much music. A lot of people said that seems to be all people think of. And just because you don't have, you know, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. But one thing I noticed is that this is perhaps one of the most authentic 80s films because of the magic rules, because of the sort of approach to the wishes and the magic, and some somewhat dubious things people have pointed out. It's very authentically 80s because if you compare it to a film like Big, very weird thing. And then you sort of have this. Do you think that holds up at all, or do you think it's...
I think, and speaking as someone who wasn't in the 80s, but I love the 80s.
Matt's an 80s nerd,
I love
especially
the
a
80s
music nerd.
aesthetically, yeah. But I agree with what you said. Like, people think 80s, oh, where's the 808 synth toms? Where's the Italo bass and stuff?
Where's Madonna playing on the big screen
but,
on MTV?
You know, the cars were all 80s. People were dressed 80s. Pedro Pascal's blue shoulder-padded suit.
Yes.
That was incredible.
But the 80s were, especially in America, capitalism on steroids. And that's what the film was about. The film was about more.
The thing is, modern shows show the 80s in that very stereotyped light. Like, I mean, I love Stranger Things, but Stranger Things is very aggressively 80s. And it's, you know, every 30 seconds there's a new 80s classic song playing, and every 30 seconds there's a new, like, edgy top that Eleven buys, or, like, you know, something like that. But the 80s in reality in America, like, as much as the whole, like, everything going to hell kind of aspect in Wonder Woman 84 did not in fact happen in that way. You know, society tends to put a golden light on eras like the 80s, despite the fact that it was truly an era where capitalism was king and the people who were not subscribing to that were so severely oppressed and had so many issues going on. So it actually kind of showed this nice medium ground of this is what 80s would have been.
Yeah.
This is what it actually would have looked like rather than the stereotyped version.
One thing that I said this to you as we were leaving the cinema. Steve, it's really interesting. A film released in 2020, looking back at the 80s, having a character from the 1910s remark on the futuristic technology. I think that's so interesting. There's
and
such
Chris Pine is such a good actor.
Yeah,
it's
but there's such crazy context surrounding that. And what does it mean? Like, often we forget, and like Wonder Woman is a fish out of water story. And it was funny because it in the first film, as Steve was showing Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman around the world, because he knew it, and this time Diana was showing Steve around the world.
Because Diana's learned how to keep up with the times, which is something so interesting about her character that I love.
And one thing that and talking about Steve and Diana, is when I saw the trailers, and because in the first film, spoiler alert...
we've revealed he's died already.
Yeah, Steve...
Steve be dead.
Steve sacrificed himself, and it was beautiful. And then when I saw the trailers for this film, when I saw Chris Pine was in it doing like, oh, I don't know the 80s... I was like, oh, God, why is he back?
It was so beautiful.
But the story actually made full use and justified him being there, because the whole point was Diana, you know, loved him and never loved anyone the same way. So when the Wishing Stone read her mind and brought him back, she was so happy, but she lost her powers, and she ended up having to choose between him and her powers, or him and the world, really. And it was a great emotional moment. I was crying in the cinema. And yeah, so what I'm saying is it could very easily have been, I don't know what to do in the sequel-itis, so I'll just make the first movie again, which is what lots of sequels end up being.
And mercifully, we didn't have that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm really happy with that. Performance-wise, Gal Gadot was great. She's she's good. I mean, some people don't like her. I guess I can understand that. She is a little bit like subtle in her performance, if you know what I mean. She's very reserved and charismatic, and obviously she's an amazing physical performer.
Also,
She's fantastic as Diana.
Can we really quickly talk about the little girl who played little Diana? All of her stunts she did herself,
She did, yes.
including all the equestrian stuff, because she's like a professional equestrian. She's like 13 or something. She's amazing. Before we wrap up, Linda Carter.
Yes.
Linda Carter is back. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm wondering whether we're going to get a Flashpoint explanation.
If we're going to have her appear in future things, or if it's just going to be a one-off.
Yeah,
You know.
or whether she is who she says she is, or...
Who did she say she was?
Hysteria.
So she was the chick with the gold armor.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether she actually may be an alternate timeline Diana.
That'd be interesting.
Because Flashpoint's going to come out, and which I'm dreading, but okay.
Linda Carter, for those at home who who aren't aware, was Diana in the 70s TV show.
Which is awesome, and I love her.
And we're actually currently watching Supergirl on The Flash, and Linda Carter's in that as well as a president.
And so's the woman who played Supergirl in the original Supergirl TV show as well. She's Supergirl's adoptive mum in the new series. But anyway, yeah, I'm really interested to see where they go with the character, whether they do the time travel aspect, because I'm assuming they're trying to do a connected series, but it's a bit grim because we don't know what the hell they're going to do from here. I'd honestly just stick with Wonder Woman and the Birds of Prey vibes, and then that's about it. But that's just me. So we'll see where Linda goes from here, because I would love to see her as an alternate future Diana. Because, spoiler alert for Crisis on the Infinite Earths, the Flash CW Arrowverse series, which you have to block your ears for. There is a scene, actually you already know this, where Ezra Miller and...
Yes.
The Barry Allen from that universe, Grant Gustin, meet.
And then Ezra Miller choked him out.
Yeah. And there's a moment that actually kind of hints to Flashpoint, because Ezra Miller's character of the Flash should not exist in that point in time.
Yes, it's interesting to see where it will go.
It's very cool.
Anyway, that's today's episode. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with a review of Pixar's new film, Soul. I'm Royce.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Holly.
We'll see you next week. Bye for now.